Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Newmark here. I am recording this video for our English 513 class in week 1. I'm recording this highlights video differently than I have done for prior classes, so I'm hoping that this works. I am using Zoom so that you can both see me up here in the corner and you can see the content on our screen. So let's jump right in. So this video is going to do a few things. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a course overview, and then I'm going to tell you about your buddies in the class with whom you're going to create videos like this in future weeks. And then I'm going to do a bit of an overview of the readings for this week. So first of all, I'm going to share these slides beneath this YouTube video so that you can read these rather dense slides yourself. But I'm just going to go through the content here. So in this class, we will be studying design conventions and rhetorical strategies of scientific, environmental, and medical writing. In what genres do we encounter these categories of writing, I would ask? So we're starting off with one, the environmental impact statements, which can be qualified as environmental writing, but so can other things like in creative nonfiction writing, and fiction writing indeed as well. I do wonder about the name of this class to begin with. It really pulls these three seemingly independent on the basis of how they're categorized in the course title categories together into one class. We might ask, why these three, scientific, medical, and environmental? Why not attend to the ways in which they overlap and merge? In fact, that's what we're going to do. So what are the differences between learning how to write in these fields as, say, a writer for a pharmaceutical company and writing about these fields, such as in an article analyzing medical documents? One of the items that you read for this week, the 2 chapters from Jennifer Clary Lemon's book, that's a good way of foregrounding this very concern. It is environmental writing, but it is in a very academic manner. It is a text that studies material rhetorics in the Anthropocene, but it can qualify as environmental writing, but it is not like a manual or a vocational text that teaches you how to compose something like an environmental impact statement. So there's a lot of thorny issues at play here. So we're going to examine all of these issues over the course of the semester. So next, rather abruptly, I want to tell you a little bit about how you're going to create your own weekly highlights video and accompanying discussion board prompt. So you'll get a class buddy, and we're going to do that next week. And you'll fill out a Google form in order to give me your preferences for your buddy. And so with your buddy, you're going to create a 7 to 10 minute video. I'll just let you know my video will probably be a little bit longer because I'm doing a lot more in it than just going over the texts. You're going to consider the weekly course readings. One of them, multiple readings if there are multiple readings assigned per week. And so this is how you might divide your work. One buddy might lead the design of the slideshow template, and both buddies will populate it with content. Buddy 2 might synthesize and streamline the slide content. Buddy 1 might organize the recording of the voiceover of the slide presentation, and buddy 2 might share the video with me to post to my YouTube channel. And if you wish for yours to be unlisted so nobody can find it, I'm happy to do that for you. So you and your buddy will collaborate on composing 3 questions to be shared as the discussion board prompt to accompany the video that week and to foster discussion. And you're going to also find a way to generate responses from your peers by designing an effective prose style in your post. But then you're going to go back in after your peers have responded and you're going to respond to them. So we're going to create a real conversation in the discussion board. Okay, so that's how you go about doing the weekly highlights video with your buddy. Okay, now again, abruptly, we're going to jump into one of your readings. It says reading 2, but I guess it depends the order you did it. Reading 1, reading 2, I may have titled them both reading 2, but the first is Carolyn Miller. This was her dissertation from the year 1980, and she's become a very important figure over these last 44 years in technical and professional communication. She's written a lot of things. I actually found it really interesting to go back and read her dissertation myself. So she studies environmental impact statements, and she asks whether they constitute a rhetorical genre. So some of you have taken classes in classical rhetoric and contemporary rhetoric in our rhetoric and writing program. So you've thought about what rhetoric and oratory are, how persuasive communication works. And I think it's really interesting how she takes that question and applies it to this whole category of government documents. So she looks into what the history of the document type is, how it emerged from legislation. And I would ask you, how do you categorize these documents, these environmental impact statements? Are they environmental writing to you? I want you to think about that. So I've included a slide here from the present day from the Department of Energy that is a flow chart of crafting an environmental impact statement and the timeline of that. So Miller writes, the rhetorical critic can be overtly concerned with the ways in which symbolic action creates the socio-cultural matrix we call social reality. The critic provides then an explanatory framework. So that is the interpreter, that is the analyst, the critic. So symbolic action, if you took a visual rhetoric class with me, we studied semiotics. So symbolic action is comprised of various things we do to allow ourselves to be understood by another person. So that can be in words, or that can be symbols we use to write, end up being understood as a communicative mechanism. So according to Miller, environmental impact statements also represent an important cultural trend in which scientific and technical information is used to inform social and political decisions. So I have a slide up here from the Department of Transportation in New York that is a informational document, piece of technical communication, about what an EIS is. So you can pause the video and look at this, or view the slideshow and examine that more closely. So what are Miller's strategies for constituting this genre, as she inquires about whether it is a genre? So what do you make of her summary of her pool of study documents, that they are characterized by legal and administrative constraints that can be taken as representative, even as definitive of the entire body of document? And of course, EISs have really changed a lot over the last 44 years, and I would love you to explore that maybe in the discussion board. Miller writes, the theory previously developed suggests that a prerequisite for a rhetorical genre is an identifiable and recurrent rhetorical situation. Those of you who've taught our freshman year writing classes, you're very well versed in talking about rhetorical situation. So what is the rhetorical situation for the emergence of an EIS? So I have a slide up here from Sonia Foss about generic analysis, a method of rhetorical criticism. So it thinks through what a genre is and how we analyze it. So can the public's need and compliance with NEPA both be achieved in an environmental impact statement? So is it equally able to comply with the law and serve the public through this very technical document, extremely lengthy, as you'll see in the examples from next week? So there are many challenges associated with the various audiences of environmental impact statements. It's like, can you please multiple audiences at once? Is that possible? So these documents are part of a social pattern in which they function as communication. Three particularly relevant patterns are bureaucratic decision-making, the conceptual patterns of the environmental movement, and those in the American judicial system. So I'm gonna just say one more thing, one more slide about this topic. So what do you make of the criticisms of environmental science in the early 70s? I thought this was super interesting. And there's a present day book up on the screen from Routledge, The Application of Science and Environmental Impact Statements. It really attends to this very topic of inquiry: is, are environmental impact statements in fact very scientific? We're going to revisit these at the end of this module as we're on the cusp of moving into scientific writing, and look at EISs in that way as well. So if the nature of ecological information is tentative, at what point when Miller is writing, at the point when Miller is writing in 1980, how does that complicate the role of an EIS? Can you identify some of the early criticisms of environmental impact statements? And what are some of the scientific research type of problems identified in these sorts of documents? If areas of specialization have special topics, following Aristotle, what are the topics of focus in an environmental impact statement, which must be found? What are those old chestnuts, or those topics, those foundational topics. Okay, abruptly shifting yet again, I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about Jennifer Clary Lemon's amazing recent book, Nest Work. I found this book to be incredible. It's so different from Carolyn Miller's work as a technical communicator, analyzing in a really systematic way a potential genre, these EISs. So EISs, in fact, are kind of subtext for the work that Clary Lemon is doing, documents like EISs. So her book is very recent, as I've said. I love how she foregrounds from the start that humans and animals too are actants. They are agents. So non-human animals is how she describes birds. So birds and humans are animals together in this moment. Her book is based in site-based rhetorical fieldwork. Well, what is that? How does human-centered rhetoric fail us in the Anthropocene? And why does Clary Lemon call for new material rhetorics of the non-human? Think about what the Anthropocene is and explore it if you don't know what that word is. So this is Jennifer Clary Lemon here on the screen. She lives in Winnipeg, where she's I think an associate professor. Maybe she's a full professor at the University of Winnipeg, I think. So she defines her work as drawing together elements of the ecological, the rhetorical, and the post-human. Borrowing from Boer and Young, she imagines scenarios where human and non-human participate together to affect change. We're really used to thinking of humans as the agentive forces in our world. That is problematic thinking, and it's led us to this moment in the Anthropocene where there's a lot of species degradation and extinction. So engaging with plants and animals' own rhetoricity. So if we are used to thinking of humans as persuasive creatures, how do we attune ourselves to moments when plants and animals are persuasive in their own ways? So addressivity rather than signification. That's a statement of hers that I found really compelling. This concept is attuned to the meaning-making capacity that has historically been understood as being a human-only matter. So reckoning with birdie rhetoricity so that we can think, act, respond, and dwell with birds or other creatures, right? It might not always be birdie rhetoricity, but some other kind of non-human rhetoricity. So arguing for the inclusion of rhetoric in post-human studies, adding to the critical apparatus already supplied by literary studies, urban communication scholars, and affect theorists. So the human non-human binary or conversation is one that has been taken up by scholars across many fields. I've indeed engaged with this work in my own scholarship. In human geography as one area of study, I've been really interested in what constructs we use to think through place and space and how to disambiguate those from each other. She gets into some of those topics as well. So in her first case study, Clary Lemon reveals this, quote, human mitigations for the specific species in this book then are parts of the rhetorical ecologies that gather together in one place, fragile and oftentimes failed efforts to allow difference as difference. Yet they also help us recognize limits to our understanding, helping us attune ourselves better to the loss of relations between self and very specific small non-human others. Such attunements gather together in physical and place sites of haptic and embodied encounter. Please dwell on what she means by haptic embodied encounter. Look up what those terms mean and really consider them. So thinking about reciprocity and Indigenous ways of knowing, as I conclude here, how do we make sense of this claim? Swallows absent bodies, she writes, are a response, constitute a decision. And without swallow bodies, as she's talking about the barn swallow, humans are faced with a different and ongoing set of challenges about living in a world without swallows, a different set of propositions altogether. So how do we move beyond Anthropocenic thought? So this is an image from the National Gallery of Canada by an artist whose last name is Bertinsky. You can look it up. It's of a mining site. So I want to leave you with this as we continue to consider the readings this week by Miller and Clary Lemon in the discussion board, and you'll see my questions to you there, and I look forward to reading your responses.